Power of nonverbal communication. What you don't say speaks volumes. What works well. Es bueno. Nonverbal communication is one of the most underrated yet powerful tools in leadership. It's not just about what you say, it's about how you show up, the energy you bring, and what you communicate without speaking a single word. The subtle cues in body language, tone, facial expressions, and even silence can often reveal more than words. When you learn to leverage nonverbal communication, it becomes a way to connect, understand, and lead more effectively. But nonverbal communication isn't just about interpreting signals from others. It's about being mindful of how you're coming across as well. As leaders, we need to be aware of our own body language and tone, recognizing the messages we might unintentionally be sending. And this becomes even more challenging over virtual platforms like Teams or Zoom, where some of the natural cues we rely on in person, posture, full body movement, subtle eye contact, are harder to pick up. In the virtual world, we have to work twice as hard to ensure our tone, facial expressions, and attentiveness communicate the right messages. Real world experience. Throughout my leadership journey, I've seen firsthand the impact of nonverbal communication. In many cases, it has allowed me to address concerns before they escalated into bigger issues. I remember one meeting where a team member verbally agreed with everything being discussed, but their body language, crossed arms, lack of eye contact, told a different story. Instead of ignoring it, I paused the conversation to check in. That moment of stopping to tune in saved the project from potential derailment. Virtual environments pose new challenges. During a series of virtual meetings, I noticed a pattern. Team members would disengage, their cameras off, or their gaze somewhere else, leaving me unsure of their level of engagement. It's much harder to read subtle cues through a screen, and nonverbal communication can feel stifled by the digital barrier. I realized that I needed to overcompensate by being more explicit in asking for feedback, paying closer attention to tone, and even relying more heavily on follow-up written communication. A simple nod or smile isn't always as clear or impactful through a webcam. Nonverbal communication is also about knowing how to offer reassurance when words aren't enough. I remember a particularly challenging time for one of my team members, drained and exhausted. Instead of pressing them with questions or assuming they were fine, I chose to simply listen, offer my presence, and give them the space to navigate their situation. Words could have overwhelmed them, but nonverbal support through attentiveness and understanding built trust and connection. Sometimes it's less about saying the right thing and more about showing up with the right energy. What does not work so well? No bueno. Ignoring nonverbal cues, especially in virtual environments, is a missed opportunity. In person, we can rely on body language, tone, and even the atmosphere in the room to gauge how things are really going. But in virtual meetings, these signals are often muted or distorted. I've seen leaders bulldoze through meetings without recognizing the disengagement happening on the other side of the screen. They miss the subtle cues, an unfocused gaze, a delayed response, or a muted microphone that spoke volumes about the team's frustration or confusion. This kind of oversight leads to misunderstandings, missed opportunities to connect, and ultimately disengagement. But just as dangerous as ignoring nonverbal cues is making assumptions about what people's body language is saying. I've seen leaders act like body language experts, judging people based on their crossed arms or facial expressions, without validating what's really going on. Instead of checking in, they assumed they knew exactly what the person was feeling, only to spread these assumptions behind closed doors. I once watched a leader misread neutral expressions as disinterest, then gossip about them later, completely misjudging the situation. Sometimes people just have a resting face. It doesn't always mean something deeper. Making assumptions without asking leads to false narratives, further eroding trust. Nonverbal cues are powerful, but they can also be misleading if we aren't careful to validate what we think we're seeing. Leaders who ignore or misinterpret these cues, especially without asking the person directly, can easily create more harm than good. Nonverbal communication speaks volumes. It allows us to understand what's really going on beneath the surface, even when words fail. But it also requires us to remain humble and avoid assuming we know what others are feeling or thinking without validation. The challenge is even greater in virtual environments, where subtle cues are harder to pick up and misinterpretations can happen more easily. As leaders, we need to sharpen our awareness, both in person and through virtual platforms. Whether we're leading face-to-face or over Zoom, nonverbal communication is a tool that helps us connect more deeply and lead more effectively. But we also have to remember that nonverbal cues can be subtle or misleading, and it's our responsibility to ask, not assume. The song More Than Words by Extreme beautifully captures this practice. The lyrics remind us that actions and presence often say more than words ever could. Just like in the song, leadership isn't always about what's spoken. It's about the energy you bring, the understanding you foster, and the connections you build through gestures, tone, and silence. Sometimes what you don't say speaks louder than anything else. When we master the art of nonverbal communication and balance it with the humility to ask, instead of assuming, we unlock a deeper level of connection. In leadership, as in life, what you don't say often speaks the loudest. This concludes Chapter 50. Please proceed to Chapter 51. Prioritize DEI, transforming diversity, equity, and inclusion into measurable action.